You're at your doctor's office. The appointment was routine, nothing alarming. You've been feeling mostly fine, a bit tired here and there, but nothing you'd call a real problem. Your doctor reviews your blood work and pauses. Your blood sugar is elevated. We need to monitor this. So what do? Like most people, you Google it. You see articles about cutting sugar, avoiding carbs, reducing portions. You buy a meal prep container. You commit. You're strict for 2 weeks. You feel deprived. Your energy crashes. By week 4, you're back to your old habits. 3 months later, you get tested again. Your blood sugar, exactly the same, or worse. I hear that story every single week. And I want to tell you something. The frustration isn't because you lack willpower. It's because the information you're receiving is incomplete. Managing blood sugar isn't just about restriction, it's about replacement. My name is Dr. William Parker. I've spent 18 years working in preventive medicine, and I've seen something remarkable happen when people understand the science behind what they're eating. This channel exists to give you exactly that, the research in language that makes sense, so you can make decisions about your body before a condition gets worse. Today we're talking about blood sugar, specifically about 10 foods that clinical research has shown can improve your body's ability to use insulin, stabilize energy throughout the day, and help you feel like yourself again. These aren't wellness trends, they're foods backed by published research and real cellular mechanisms. Stay with me through all 10 because number 7 is the one that shifts everything. It's the piece people overlook even when they're doing everything else right. And the last item on this list, it genuinely changes how you approach the entire conversation about food and blood sugar. But before we get into the specifics, I need to give you one concept that makes everything else make sense, the 3-point blood sugar crisis. When your blood sugar stays elevated, 3 specific things happen in your body. Understanding this is the key to understanding why the 10 foods I'm about to share actually work. First, your cells stop responding. Insulin is the hormone that acts like a key. It opens the door to your cells so glucose can enter and be converted into energy. When you develop insulin resistance, those cellular doors become harder to open. The key is there. You're turning it. But the door barely budges, so glucose doesn't enter the cells, it stays in your bloodstream. And your pancreas, sensing this, starts producing more and more insulin, trying harder and harder to force that door open. For a while this works, but eventually your pancreas gets exhausted. Glucose keeps accumulating. You end up with chronically high blood sugar even when you're not eating anything extreme. Second, your liver becomes dysfunctional. In a healthy body, insulin sends a clear signal to your liver. Stop releasing stored glucose into the blood. But in an insulin-resistant body, that signal gets ignored. Your liver keeps releasing glucose even when blood sugar is already elevated. It's like pouring water into a cup that's already overflowing. Nobody taught your liver to stop, so it doesn't. Third, and this is the one most people never hear about, inflammation is destroying your insulin receptors. Here's what's critical to understand. Chronic low-grade inflammation doesn't just feel bad, it actively damages the insulin receptors on your cells. The more inflamed your system is, the less responsive those receptors become. And this creates a cascade. High blood sugar triggers inflammation. Inflammation increases insulin resistance. Insulin resistance keeps blood sugar high. One feeds the other quietly for years. So here's the shift in thinking that changes everything. If inflammation is driving insulin resistance and insulin resistance is keeping blood sugar high, then foods that reduce inflammation are just as important as foods that slow glucose absorption. That's the framework. Keep it in your mind as we go through each food because the best foods don't just manage blood sugar in one way, they work through multiple pathways in your body. Now I want to ask you something personal. Think back 5 years. Do you remember when you could eat a full meal and feel steady an hour later? When your energy didn't crash hard at 3 p.m.? When you woke up feeling clear-headed instead of foggy and heavy? The research on this is consistent. Insulin sensitivity is not fixed. It responds to what you eat, when you eat it, and how often you move your body. And most of the solutions are far simpler than the advice most people receive. Before we go deeper, if you want a detailed step-by-step guide that walks you through everything we're covering today and turns it into an actual daily plan you can follow, I've put together a free resource linked in the description. Thousands of people in this community are already using it. Grab it while we work through this together. When you eat carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream, your pancreas releases insulin. Normally, insulin escorts glucose into your muscle cells, fat cells, and liver where it's used or stored. That's the system working correctly. When insulin resistance develops, your cells stop responding efficiently to the insulin signal. Your pancreas compensates by producing more insulin, trying to force the glucose in. The critical insight is this: the solution is not always to eat less glucose. The solution is to make your cells more receptive to insulin, reduce the inflammation that's jamming the locks, slow the rate at which glucose enters your bloodstream, improve your liver's ability to regulate glucose. These are the mechanisms that actually create change. I've ranked these 10 foods from important to most critical. Start with the first, but pay closest attention to items 7 through 10. Those are the foods that create the deepest shifts. Food 1, berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Think of someone who's been told their blood sugar is borderline and has cut out all fruit because they think sugar is the enemy. They're missing one of the most protective foods available, berries. Berries are extraordinarily high in anthocyanins, the compound that gives them their deep color. Anthocyanins do two critical things. First, they reduce inflammation throughout your body, particularly in the tissues surrounding insulin receptors. Second, they slow the rate at which your digestive system breaks down carbohydrates. This means glucose enters your bloodstream more gradually, preventing the sharp spikes that exhaust your insulin response. Berries also contain resveratrol, a polyphenol that directly activates pathways in your cells that improve insulin signaling. 1 cup of mixed berries, blueberries, blackberries, raspberries daily. Fresh is best. Frozen with no added sugar is your second choice. Add them to plain yogurt, eat them as a snack, or blend them into smoothies. Timing matters. Eat them with a protein source, eggs, nuts, yogurt, to slow glucose absorption further. They add berries to sugary smoothies or high glycemic cereals, which cancels the benefit. They also buy berry-flavored products thinking that counts. It doesn't. Whole berries only. Food 2, turmeric. Think of someone with high inflammation markers who's been told to take an anti-inflammatory medication. What nobody mentions is that turmeric contains a compound called curcumin that works through very similar mechanisms without the side effects of long-term medication use. Curcumin is one of the most researched anti-inflammatory compounds available. It crosses the blood-brain barrier and reduces inflammatory cytokines throughout your body. Specifically, curcumin decreases TNF-alpha and IL-6, two inflammatory markers directly linked to insulin resistance. When inflammation decreases, your insulin receptors become more responsive. The key is bioavailability. Turmeric alone is poorly absorbed. Black pepper contains piperine, which increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. A 2013 randomized controlled trial published in Diabetes Care followed 240 pre-diabetic adults for 9 months. One group received curcumin supplementation, the other a placebo. The curcumin group showed a 16% reduction in progression to type 2 diabetes. A 2019 meta-analysis of 11 studies found that curcumin supplementation significantly reduced fasting blood glucose and improved HOMA-IR scores, a measure of insulin resistance. They used turmeric without black pepper, limiting absorption. They also use it occasionally instead of daily, which doesn't build the cumulative anti-inflammatory effect needed to restore insulin sensitivity. Food 3, cruciferous vegetables. Think of someone who exercises regularly and keeps portions reasonable but still can't stabilize their blood sugar. The missing piece is the specific compound in cruciferous vegetables that addresses liver dysfunction, something they've never heard of. Cruciferous vegetables contain sulforaphane, a sulfur compound that activates a cellular pathway called NRF2. This pathway reduces oxidative stress and directly decreases how much glucose your liver produces and releases into your blood. Remember the second dysfunction from our framework, the liver releasing too much glucose even when blood sugar is already high. Sulforaphane specifically targets this problem. Cruciferous vegetables also contain indole-3-carbinol, which supports healthy estrogen metabolism. Elevated estrogen levels are associated with greater insulin resistance, particularly in women. A 2017 double-blind, placebo-controlled study published in Science Translational Medicine by Axelson and colleagues followed 97 obese participants with type 2 diabetes who were not well controlled on standard medications. Those who received concentrated sulforaphane extract from broccoli sprouts showed a 10% reduction in fasting blood glucose over 12 weeks with no other dietary changes. The control group showed no improvement. A separate study in molecular nutrition and food research found that regular consumption of cruciferous vegetables was associated with a 33% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. They boil or overcook these vegetables, which destroys the active compounds. They also eat them too infrequently to build the cumulative effect. Once a week doesn't work. Daily or near daily does. Food 4, almonds and almond butter. Think of someone who's been told nuts are too high in calories and fat, so they've avoided them for years. What wasn't explained is that the specific fats and proteins in almonds actually improve how your cells respond to insulin. Almonds contain three critical compounds. First, magnesium, and chronically low magnesium is one of the most consistent findings in people with insulin resistance. Magnesium is a cofactor for the enzymes responsible for glucose metabolism. Without enough, your cells can't process glucose efficiently. Second, almonds contain polyphenols that reduce oxidative stress in the pancreatic beta cells responsible for producing insulin. When those cells are under less oxidative stress, they produce insulin more appropriately. Third, the monounsaturated fat in almonds slows gastric emptying. Food leaves your stomach more gradually, so glucose enters your blood more slowly. This prevents the sharp post-meal spikes that exhaust your insulin system. A randomized controlled trial published in Nutrition and Metabolism in 2019 found that participants who consumed 1 ounce of almonds daily showed significantly improved insulin sensitivity and reduced post-meal glucose spikes compared to the control group over 12 weeks. A separate study from the Journal of the American College of Nutrition found that almond consumption was associated with lower fasting insulin levels and improved HOMA-IR scores. A 10-year prospective study from Harvard found that people who consumed almonds regularly had a 30% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to those who rarely ate them. They buy honey-roasted or flavored varieties, which add sugar and defeat the purpose. They also eat them in large quantities, thinking more is better, when the studied dose is specifically 1 ounce, quality over quantity. Food 5, apple cider vinegar. Think of someone who dismissed apple cider vinegar as a wellness trend. They were right to be skeptical of the extreme claims online, but wrong to dismiss the actual mechanism, which is well-researched and clinically documented. The acetic acid in apple cider vinegar does two specific things. First, it inhibits the enzyme alpha-glucosidase that breaks down complex carbohydrates and starches into glucose. Slow that enzyme and glucose absorption slows. This means lower post-meal blood sugar spikes. This mechanism has been documented in multiple studies and works regardless of the source of acetic acid, though apple cider vinegar is the most researched form. A 2004 study published in Diabetes Care by Johnston and colleagues followed 29 insulin-resistant adults. Participants who took 2 tablespoons of vinegar before a high-carbohydrate meal showed improved insulin sensitivity by between 19 and 34% compared to those taking a placebo. The effect was most pronounced in people with existing insulin resistance, meaning if you need it most, it works best. A 2015 meta-analysis in Nutrition Reviews analyzed multiple vinegar studies and found consistent improvements in post-meal glucose spikes and fasting blood glucose levels. They drink it undiluted, which can damage tooth enamel and irritate the esophagus over time. They also take it at random times instead of before meals, which limits the effect. Dilute it always, and if you have a history of acid reflux or gastroparesis, speak with your doctor first. Food 6, fatty fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines. The scenario: think of someone who's been managing borderline blood sugar for years and cut their fat intake significantly based on old dietary guidelines. What nobody explained is that the right fats are essential for restoring insulin sensitivity. Fatty fish contain EPA and DHA, 2 omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammatory cytokines throughout your body. Remember the third dysfunction from our framework: inflammation damages your insulin receptors. Omega-3s directly counteract that damage. EPA and DHA also improve the fluidity of cell membranes, making it easier for glucose transporters to function optimally. They reduce triglyceride levels, which are independently associated with insulin resistance, and they support the health of your vascular system, improving blood flow to tissues that need glucose. A study in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that participants who consumed fatty fish twice weekly showed improved insulin sensitivity within 4 to 6 weeks of consistent consumption. 2 to 3 servings per week of wild-caught salmon, mackerel, or sardines. A serving is approximately 3 to 4 ounces. Cook by baking, steaming, or gentle pan searing. Canned wild salmon and sardines in water are excellent, affordable alternatives that retain the omega-3 content. Food 7, cinnamon. Think of someone who heard cinnamon was good for blood sugar and has been sprinkling it on oatmeal every morning for months, using the wrong type and wondering why they're not seeing results. Most cinnamon sold in grocery stores is cassia cinnamon. While it does contain active compounds, cassia also contains coumarin, a naturally occurring substance that in large daily doses can stress your liver. Ceylon cinnamon also increases the expression of glucose transporters on your cell surface, literally making it easier for glucose to move from your blood into your cells. A 2013 meta-analysis published in the Annals of Family Medicine analyzed 10 randomized controlled trials and found that cinnamon supplementation was associated with a statistically significant reduction in fasting plasma glucose of approximately 24 milligrams per deciliter compared to control groups. The effect was strongest in people with type 2 diabetes. A 2015 study published in Complementary Therapies in Medicine found that Ceylon cinnamon specifically, not cassia, reduced both fasting blood glucose and HbA1c in pre-diabetic adults over a 12-week period. Half a teaspoon to 1 teaspoon of Ceylon cinnamon daily. Stir it into warm water, add it to plain yogurt, mix it into oatmeal, or sprinkle it on berries. Consistency matters. Daily use creates the cumulative effect, not occasional use. Look specifically for Ceylon or cinnamon verum on the label. The standard grocery variety is cassia and doesn't carry the same benefit. It also poses a real risk to your liver at daily doses. Food 8. Eggs. Think of someone who's been avoiding eggs for 10 years because of cholesterol concerns, not realizing they're missing one of the most effective blood sugar stabilizing foods available. I want to be clear here, this is not medical advice. If you have specific cholesterol concerns, discuss them with your physician. Individual circumstances vary, but here's what the blood sugar research specifically shows. Eggs contain a protein-to-fat ratio that makes them extraordinarily satiating. When you're satiated, your body doesn't trigger the hormonal cascade, ghrelin or exogenic peptides, that drives blood sugar and hunger spikes. Eggs also contain choline, which supports liver function and is essential for liver-mediated glucose regulation. They contain lutein and zeaxanthin, antioxidants that reduce oxidative stress in pancreatic beta cells. And they contain leucine, a branched-chain amino acid that directly stimulates insulin secretion when consumed with carbohydrates, helping you release the right amount of insulin at the right time. A study in Nutrients found that egg consumption at breakfast improved glucose regulation throughout the entire day, not just at breakfast. 2 eggs at breakfast, soft-boiled, poached, scrambled, or baked. No added sugar. The preparation method doesn't matter. What matters is consistency and timing. Breakfast is optimal. Food 9. Dark leafy greens, spinach, kale, arugula. Think of someone who knows they should eat more vegetables but thinks a side salad is adequate. They haven't understood that certain leafy greens contain a specific mineral that directly restores how your cells respond to insulin. Dark leafy greens are among the richest sources of bioavailable magnesium. This is critical because magnesium is a cofactor for over 300 enzymatic reactions in your body, including every step of glucose metabolism and insulin signaling. When you're magnesium deficient, which is extremely common, your cells literally cannot process glucose efficiently, regardless of how much insulin is present. Leafy greens also contain polyphenols and carotenoids that reduce oxidative stress and inflammation. They're high in insoluble fiber, which supports healthy gut bacteria populations that produce short-chain fatty acids known to improve insulin sensitivity. A meta-analysis published in BMJ analyzing 19 studies found that each additional serving of leafy green vegetables per day was associated with a 13% lower risk of type 2 diabetes. A 2016 study in Diabetes Care found that high magnesium intake was associated with significantly lower fasting insulin levels and improved insulin sensitivity scores. A randomized controlled trial found that participants who increased leafy green consumption to 2 servings daily showed improved post-meal glucose control within 4 weeks. 2 to 3 servings of dark leafy greens daily. A serving is approximately 2 cups raw or 1 cup cooked. Eat them raw in salads, add them to smoothies, sauté them with olive oil and garlic, or add them to soups. Variety matters. Spinach, kale, arugula, collard greens, rotate them to get different nutrient profiles. Food 10. Legumes. Think of someone who's done almost everything right. They've added several of the foods from this list. They're walking daily. Their blood sugar improved, but then it plateaued. They can't figure out what's missing. What's missing is addressing their starch baseline. This is the food that changes the entire conversation. Here's something most people never hear. It's not just about what you add to your diet. It's about what those additions replace. Legumes have a glycemic index of approximately 25 to 30, compared to 70 for white bread and 63 for white rice. But the real power isn't just the lower glycemic index. Legumes are extraordinarily high in resistant starch. Legumes are also high in soluble fiber, protein, and magnesium. Each of these independently, the legume group saw meaningful reductions in blood pressure, improvements in cholesterol profiles, and sustained weight loss. A 2020 meta-analysis of 41 studies found that regular legume consumption was associated with improved insulin sensitivity and reduced progression to type 2 diabetes. This is the critical one. They add vinegar before meals, they take cinnamon, they eat more fish, they do everything else on this list, but the staple starch they eat every day, white rice, white bread, pasta, never changes. They add to their diet instead of replacing their diet baseline. Before I give you your 30-day challenge, I want to leave you with something practical you can use at your very next doctor's appointment. I call it the Blood Sugar Clarity Protocol. 5 questions that will help you have a far more productive conversation with your physician about your specific situation. The 3 questions. First, what is my current fasting blood sugar and my HbA1c? And where specifically do you want those numbers to be in 6 months? Don't accept vague answers like better. Get specific targets. Knowing your targets helps you track progress and stay motivated. Second, are any of the medications I'm currently taking known to affect blood sugar or insulin sensitivity? Many common medications, including certain blood pressure drugs, corticosteroids, and even some antidepressants, can raise blood sugar. You deserve to know if that's a factor in your numbers. You deserve to understand the full picture. Third, what specific dietary changes would have the most impact for someone with my numbers right now? Push for specifics. Watch your sugar is not actionable. Replace your white rice with lentils and add 2 servings of fatty fish weekly is. Your physician should be able to give you specific evidence-based recommendations. Here's your 30-day challenge, and I want you to take this seriously because this is where intention becomes reality. Week 1, choose 3 of the 10 foods from today's list that you don't currently eat regularly. Add the first one to your daily routine this week. It doesn't have to be complicated. Add berries to your breakfast. Add 1 serving of leafy greens to dinner. Add almonds as a snack. Week 2, add the second food to your routine. You now have 2 new foods you're eating daily. Week 3, add the third food. You now have 3 new dietary tools in place. Week 4, don't add anything new. Focus on consistency, not perfection. The goal is to make these 3 foods automatic, things you reach for naturally, not things you have to remember to eat. Here's the tracking part, and this is important. At the end of 30 days, check again. Test your fasting glucose if possible. More importantly, notice how you feel. Most people who do this consistently report back with the same observations: steadier energy, fewer afternoon crashes, clearer mental focus, and most important, they feel better. 3 foods added gradually, tracked simply. The difference at 30 days will surprise you. I want to close with something I think about constantly after 18 years in this work. There is a difference between healthcare that generates findings and healthcare that protects your quality of life. A blood sugar number is a finding. It's data, it's measurable. But how you feel at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, whether you have the energy to do what matters to you, whether you're sharp and steady and present for the people you love, whether you wake up clear-headed or foggy, that's quality of life. That's what actually matters. And it is not what I've seen in 18 years of working with people who decided to approach this differently. You are not broken. You are not past the point of meaningful change. You have the actual right to understand what's happening in your body, why it's happening, and what the evidence actually supports. Not the trends, not the marketing, the evidence. The 10 foods we covered today are not a cure. They are not medical advice. What they are is tools, real, researched, practical tools that you can begin using today. Talk to your doctor about the ones most relevant to your situation. Start with one. Start today. That is genuinely all it takes. Share this with someone who could use this information, someone you know who's been struggling with their blood sugar, someone who's been told to just cut carbs and felt confused about what that actually means. Share it with them. You might be giving them the clarity they've been looking for. Drop a comment below. Tell me, has your doctor ever talked to you specifically about foods that affect insulin sensitivity, or have you just been given generic advice about carbs and calories? I read every comment and I want to hear your story. I'll see you in the next video. Take care.